My parents moved into my house while I was on my vacation and changed the locks. So, I kicked them out and made them homeless. My name is Victoria, and I need to tell you about the day I made my parents homeless. But to understand why, you need to know about my brother Cameron and the twisted way my family operated. Growing up, my parents had 2 kids, Cameron, their 35-year-old miracle who could do no wrong, and me, the human ATM they accidentally created. The difference in how they treated us wasn't subtle. It was a canyon so wide you could see it from space. When I was 16 years old, working 2 jobs just to buy my own groceries and school supplies, Cameron got a brand new Camaro for dropping out of community college. Not graduating, dropping out. Meanwhile, I was taking the bus to my shifts at the diner and the retail store, coming home with blistered feet and the smell of grease in my hair. My parents would sit at the dinner table, praising Cameron for finding himself, while I served them the meatloaf I'd bought with my own money. Family takes care of family, my mother would say, her eyes shining with pride as Cameron talked about his latest get-rich-quick scheme. What she really meant was, you take care of Cameron. Cameron takes care of Cameron. And we all pretend this is normal. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I had worked my tail off, maintained a solid GPA despite my exhausting schedule, and had a college fund that I'd been promised since I was 10. It wasn't much, about $48,000, but it was mine. It was my ticket out, my chance to build something better. Then Cameron decided he wanted to be a film producer. I came home one Tuesday afternoon to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread out in front of them. My stomach dropped before my mother even opened her mouth. "Sweetie, we need to talk about your college fund," she said, not meeting my eyes. "What about it?" I asked, already knowing, already feeling the ground crumbling beneath my feet. "Cameron has an incredible opportunity," my father jumped in, his voice taking on that defensive edge he always got when he knew he was about to do something terrible. "There's a film production program in Los Angeles, and he needs equipment, software, connections. This is his moment, Victoria. We can't let him miss it." "You're not touching my college fund," I said, my voice shaking. "That money is for my education. I earned it. We had an agreement." My mother's face hardened. "Don't be selfish. You're smart, you'll get scholarships. Cameron needs this more than you need some fancy university. He's struggled so much, and this is finally his chance to shine." Cameron had struggled through 18 months of community college while living rent-free in our basement, spending money on limited edition sneakers and an embarrassing collection of vinyl records. But sure, he was the one who needed help. "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. That's my future you're talking about." What happened next, I'll never forget. My father stood up, his face turning red. "We're your parents, Victoria. That money is in our name as custodians, and we've made our decision. Cameron's opportunity won't wait. And frankly, your attitude right now is exactly why you need to learn some gratitude." I felt tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You can't do this. I worked for that money. I was promised." "You were promised nothing," my mother interrupted coldly. "We saved that money, and we'll use it how we see fit. Besides, you should be happy to help your brother. What kind of sister are you?" The kind who'd been working 40 hours a week while taking AP classes, apparently. The kind who'd sacrificed her entire teenage years. But none of that mattered. They emptied my college fund the next day. All of it. $48,000 gone overnight. Cameron bought film equipment, paid for workshops, and somehow still had enough left over to purchase a gaming setup that cost more than my car. Within 6 months, he'd blown through it all and had exactly 0 film career to show for it. I went to state college on a partial scholarship, working 3 jobs to cover the rest. I waited tables at a chain restaurant, worked weekends at a department store, and tutored kids online whenever I had a spare moment. My parents never offered to help, not once. When I graduated with my degree in business administration, they didn't even come to the ceremony. Cameron had a really important online tournament that day, and they needed to be there to support him. I got my first real job at a prestigious marketing firm in Seattle when I was 24. The salary wasn't amazing, but it had potential. Benefits. A career path. I was so careful not to tell my parents where I worked. I'd learned my lesson about giving them information they could use against me. But Cameron, in one of his rare moments of actually paying attention to my life, had stalked my social media and figured it out. 2 months into my job, my parents showed up at the office unannounced. I was in a meeting with a potential client when the receptionist's panicked face appeared in the conference room window. My boss stepped out to see what was happening, and I heard my mother's voice echoing through the office. "We need to see our daughter immediately. She's not well, and we are very concerned." My blood ran cold. I excused myself from the meeting and found my parents in the lobby, making a scene that would haunt me for years. My mother was crying, actual tears streaming down her face, while my father spoke in hushed, serious tones to my horrified boss. "She's been having episodes," my father was saying. "We're worried she's not taking her medication. She needs supervision, someone to check on her. We're her parents, and we're terrified she'll hurt herself or someone else." "What are you doing?" I hissed, grabbing my mother's arm. "I don't have episodes. I'm not on medication. What are you talking about?" My mother looked at me with wide, concerned eyes that I now recognize as completely calculated. "Sweetheart, this is exactly what we're talking about. The denial, the anger. We're just trying to help you." They stayed for 3 hours. 3 hours of following me around, questioning my decisions, making comments about my stability to anyone who would listen. They inspected my desk, asked my coworkers inappropriate questions about my behavior, and created such a massive disruption that clients in the building could hear the commotion. My boss called me into his office the next day. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. "Victoria, I'm sorry, but we can't have this kind of situation in our workplace." The clients were uncomfortable, and frankly, if you're dealing with health issues that severe, you need to focus on getting better. "We're going to have to let you go." I tried to explain. I begged him to understand that my parents were lying, that this was some sick manipulation. But the damage was done. Who wants to employ someone whose own parents show up claiming they're mentally unstable? I was 24 years old and unemployed, with a destroyed reputation in my industry and parents who'd somehow convinced themselves they'd done me a favor. "We were just worried about you," my mother said when I called them, shaking with rage. "You've been so distant lately. We thought intervening would help." "Help? You got me fired." "Well, maybe you shouldn't have been working somewhere so stressful. Come home, sweetie. Live with us. We'll take care of you." Live with them. In the same house as Cameron, who was now 29 and still in their basement, streaming video games to an audience of 7 people. Absolutely not. I never told them about my next job. Or the one after that. I rebuilt my career in secret, using a friend's address for all my mail, keeping my social media locked down, and living in constant fear they'd find me again. It took me 6 years, but I did it. 6 years of 70-hour work weeks, side hustles, and living in apartments where I could hear my neighbors' every conversation through paper-thin walls. But at 30 years old I bought my own house, a real house with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard, and a mortgage with my name, only my name on it. It was a modest place in a quiet neighborhood in Spokane. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd earned every square foot of it. The day I got the keys, I sat on the floor of the empty living room and cried. Happy tears, for once. Tears of relief and pride and the overwhelming feeling that I'd finally made it. I made the mistake of telling my parents about the house. I thought enough time had passed. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud of me. They came for a visit, and I should have known from the way my mother's eyes scanned every room, calculating, measuring. This is too big for one person, she said, running her hand along the kitchen counter. You must get lonely here all by yourself. I like the space, I replied carefully. And I have friends over all the time. My father wandered through the bedrooms, opening closets, checking windows. You know who would love this space? Cameron. He's been feeling cramped in our basement. A change of scenery might be good for his creativity. Cameron's not moving in here, I said flatly. We're not saying he should move in, my mother said quickly. Too quickly. Just that it's a shame to have all these empty rooms when your brother could use the help. I changed the subject, but the seed had been planted. Over the next 2 months, they brought it up constantly. Every phone call, every text message. Cameron's really struggling. The basement is affecting his mental health. Family helps family, Victoria. I stod firm. This was my house, my sanctuary, my reward for surviving them. Then I made another mistake. I went on vacation. It was just a week-long trip to Maui with my 3 closest friends, Amber, Brooke, and Katie. We'd been planning it for 2 years, saving up, coordinating our schedules. It was supposed to be the celebration I never got, a chance to finally relax and enjoy what I'd built. The day I landed back in Seattle, I knew something was wrong. My Uber pulled up to my house at sunset, and my father's old Chevy Tahoe was blocking the driveway. My heart started hammering in my chest. They weren't supposed to be here. I hadn't told them I was going on vacation, let alone when I'd be back. I paid the driver with shaking hands and walked up to my front door, my suitcase wheels catching on the walkway. I pulled out my key, slid it into the lock, and turned. Nothing happened. I tried again, jiggling the key, thinking maybe the lock was stuck. But no, this wasn't my lock. Someone had changed it. Panic rising in my throat, I pounded on the door. My door. The door to my house that I'd bought with my own money. Within seconds, my father opened it, and the smile on his face made my blood turn to ice. Victoria. You're back early. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. What are you doing here? I demanded, trying to push past him. Why doesn't my key work? He blocked the doorway, still smiling that horrible, satisfied smile. Well, we had to change the locks for security reasons. You understand, can't be too careful these days. Security reasons? This is my house. You can't just change the locks. My mother appeared behind him, and I could see Cameron lounging on my couch, with a game controller in his hands, playing on what looked like a brand new 75-inch TV I definitely hadn't owned before. Let's not make a scene in front of the neighbors, my mother said sweetly. Come inside and we'll explain everything. I'm calling the police, I said, pulling out my phone. Go ahead, my father said calmly. We have every right to be here. I was shaking so hard I could barely dial. When the dispatcher answered, I explained as clearly as I could that my parents had broken into my house and changed the locks while I was away. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Thompson, I'll never forget his name, listened to my story, then turned to my father. Sir, do you have documentation showing you have a right to be in this property? My father reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My stomach dropped as I recognized what it was, or rather, what it was supposed to be. A deed. With their names on it. The deed was fake. It had to be. But it looked professional enough that Officer Thompson took it seriously. He examined it for several minutes while I stood there, tears of rage streaming down my face, trying to explain that I had the real deed, that I'd bought this house, that this was insane. Ma'am, this appears to be a civil matter, the officer finally said. You'll need to resolve this in court. I can't forcibly remove them based on conflicting documentation. Conflicting? My documentation isn't here, it's at my bank. I can get it tomorrow. Please. You can't just leave them in my house. But he could, and he did. As the police car pulled away, my father actually had the audacity to put his arm around my shoulders. Now that you're back, you can move into the guest room, he said pleasantly, as if he was doing me a favor. Cameron took the master bedroom since it has the best setup for his streaming equipment. And your mother and I are in the second bedroom. But the guest room is nice, you'll be comfortable there. We can finally be a real family now. I walked inside in a daze, seeing my home transformed into something I didn't recognize. The kitchen was full of their stuff, their groceries, their dishes, their stupid decorative owls my mother collected. Cameron's gaming equipment was sprawled across my living room. Their clothes were in my closets. I moved my suitcase into the guest room of my own house, and locked the door. Then I called every lawyer in the area until I found one who would see me the next morning. Attorney Jenkins was sympathetic but realistic. You'll win this case, he told me, reviewing my documentation. Your deed is legitimate. Theirs is clearly fraudulent. But the court process will take time. Months, maybe years, depending on how much they fight it. Years? They'll be living in my house for years. I'm sorry, Ms. Victoria. That's how the system works. We can try to expedite, but with their fake deed in play, it becomes a he said she said until we can prove forgery, and that requires investigations, hearings. I walked out of his office knowing I couldn't wait years. I couldn't live as a guest in my own home, watching Cameron sprawl across my furniture while my parents acted like benevolent landlords. I needed them gone now. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. My parents had spent my entire life protecting Cameron, making him untouchable, sacrificing everything, including me, on the altar of his comfort. So I knew that if I wanted to hurt them, truly hurt them, I had to go through him. I spent the next week playing the perfect daughter and the doting sister. I made breakfast, cleaned up after Cameron's messes, and acted grateful for the family time. I told Cameron I wanted to be closer to him, that I regretted not being more supportive of his dreams. I asked him about his streaming, his games, his plans. He ate it up. By day 5, he trusted me enough to let me into his room, the master bedroom that should have been mine. One evening, while Cameron and my parents went to Applebee's for dinner, I stayed home, claiming I had a headache. The moment their car left the driveway, I was at Cameron's gaming computer. What I did next, I won't pretend was noble. It wasn't. It was calculated, ruthless, and completely illegal. But they'd taken everything from me my entire life, and I was done being the victim. I searched for illegal content involving minors, the kind that would get someone put away for a very long time. I found it on the dark web, easier than I want to admit, and I downloaded approximately 2 terabytes of the most damaging files I could find.
No VPN, no encryption, no protection whatsoever.
I created a hidden folder called Personal Collection, and left it right there on his desktop, waiting to be found. Then I packed a bag and went to stay with Amber, texting my parents that I needed a few days to clear my head. 2 days later, I was sitting in Amber's apartment when my phone exploded with messages. News alerts. A SWAT raid at my address. I pulled up the local news stream and watched as my front door was literally kicked off its hinges. Officers in tactical gear swarmed my house. Cameron was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming that he didn't know what was happening. My parents were cuffed too, at least initially. Their faces frozen in shock. After the house was searched, my parents were released, but Cameron was shoved into the back of a police car. I watched my mother chase after the police car, her face crumbling, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. While they were at the police station, trying desperately to bail Cameron out, I made my move. I called Amber, Brooke, and Katie, and we converged on my house like a tactical team of our own. The front door was destroyed from the raid, which made getting in easy. We worked for 6 hours straight. Every piece of their clothing, every toiletry, every decorative owl went into trash bags and got thrown onto the front lawn. Cameron's gaming setup, every piece of equipment he'd bought with my college fund, went out too. The couch he'd been lounging on, the bed he'd slept in, all of it. I wouldn't touch anything he'd contaminated. Then I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed again. But this time, I was the only one getting keys. When my parents returned the next day, exhausted and desperate after failing to scrape together Cameron's bail money, they found their belongings soaking in the morning dew on my lawn, and their key didn't work. I watched them from my living room window as my mother approached the door. She was crying, mascara running down her face. "Victoria, open this door right now. This is insane. Your brother needs us." I walked to the window, made sure she could see me clearly, and smiled. Then I raised my middle finger and flipped her off before closing the curtains. They screamed for hours. They called the police. The same Officer Thompson showed up actually, and he told them exactly what he'd told me. This was a civil matter. Take it to court. But unlike me, they couldn't take it to court because their deed was fake and I had the real one. They eventually left, going back to their own house 40 minutes away, tails between their legs. But the story doesn't end there. Cameron's trial took 2 years. 2 years of my parents draining every resource they had to defend their golden child against overwhelming evidence. They sold their house, the one they should have retired in, to pay for lawyers. They liquidated their retirement accounts. They begged relatives for money. None of it mattered. Cameron was sentenced to 8 years in prison. 8 years for content he never even knew was on his computer. But no one believed him. How could they? It was his computer, his account, his room. My parents lost everything. Their house, their savings, their golden child. Last I heard, they're bouncing between relatives' spare rooms and couches, begging anyone who'll listen for help supporting them. Sometimes, late at night, I think about what I did. I think about Cameron sitting in a cell for something I framed him for. I think about my parents losing everything. And then I remember my empty college fund. I remember being fired because of their lies. I remember coming home to find them in my house, acting like I should be grateful. I sleep just fine. My house is mine again. The locks have been changed 3 times now, just to be safe. I got a security system. Cameras everywhere. I've started dating someone, a civil engineer named Andrew, who thinks my family stories are horrifying and who tells me regularly that I deserved better. Maybe I did. Maybe I still do. But I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being forgotten, used, and cast aside. They wanted to take everything from me one more time, so I made sure they'd never have the chance again. Am I the villain in this story? Maybe. Probably. But I'm a villain with a house, a life, and a future that's finally completely mine. And that's worth more than any family reunion could ever be.